So we're speaking to Max Aita, and since we last had an interview with Max, he's turned into a powerlifter. Max, why have you turned into a powerlifter?
My hand was so messed up, I couldn't, after an injury in weightlifting, I couldn't do a snatch or a clean and jerk anymore. My hand doesn't bend all the way, and it doesn't bend back. I can't load it and have it bent backward at the same time.
Will you demonstrate that again, please?
And I can't turn it backwards and put any pressure on it. I can bench press, but not a lot of weight. I can bench press because it's tighter and the wrist is loaded over the forearm a little better, so there's more stability. But other than that, I can't do much with it.
And so, what have you? I suppose you're obviously still a weightlifting coach. Has your approach towards coaching or strength training or things in general changed from all your experiences in powerlifting?
I've used some of the things I've seen in powerlifting for some lifters. Increasing strength in general has a big effect on beginner lifters more. The more advanced lifters trying to, if you go take a guy who squats 200 kilos and he starts squatting 250 kilos, it plays a pretty significant role in his improvement in the lifting. Obviously, it doesn't. If you just increase the squat, it doesn't have much of an effect. But in the whole encompassing training program, if he becomes stronger from those things, then he'll have an impact. If he's already squatting like 300 kilos, it's not going to be as big a difference, right? So the stronger the lifter is, the less strength seems to affect their total results, right, in the snatch and clean and jerk. With young lifters, though, it plays a big role, and a lot of the lifters that I end up coaching, a lot of lifters that get coached, but I think a lot of coaches in this country are CrossFit type lifters, where they pick up a sport late in life, their mobility, their physical disposition is not suited really well for lifting. They're just stiff or tight or weak in many different areas. So I do a lot more basic powerlifting kind of movements with them and basic powerlifting progressions, where in weightlifting, it's not as popular to have kind of linear progressions where you basically start with higher repetitions and move, through the weeks doing lower repetitions but more weight, the intensity climbs up as you get closer to contest. But I started to employ that kind of stuff with a lot of more beginner lifters and had success with it in terms of improving their just general physical abilities. That's probably the biggest carryover I've had from powerlifting or taken from powerlifting. My wife, who broke the world record in the total in the 114-pound class.
That was an all-time total. It wasn't just in one.
Regardless of federation.
Yeah.
Was raw with wraps. So she squatted 140 kilos with knee wraps, bench pressed 75 kilos, and deadlifted 170 kilos. Weighing 52 kilos. And she's taken some of those movements that we use to train for that and incorporated them into her weightlifting programs, and she's done well with it.
So what kind of movements?
Most of the movements that we've done, that we've used, have been deadlifting movements or pulling movements, because the strength in the back seems to have a bigger carryover than doing things like different stance squats or using different bars, that kind of thing. Just in general, it seems like people tend to have weak backs.
So what kind of thing are you talking about, like RDLs and? She
does like straight leg deadlifts or deadlifts from a deficit where she's standing on a block. She'll also do she pulled sumo in the meet, and she's continued to do a little bit of sumo deadlifting, and I think that's given her a little bit of strength in the outside of her hips, which I think has helped her a little bit just in terms of stability, catching the weights. Not significant, not like, an enormous carryover, but I definitely can see that. So she's done well with it. And the bench pressing movements a little bit has carried over. What's funny is not so much the bench press itself that gives much to the lifting, to Olympic lifting, but all of the supporting movements you have to do to stay healthy and keep your shoulders strong to bench press seem to have a big carryover. You know, a lot of pull-ups, weighted pull-ups, upper back exercises, bodybuilding.
And that's improved her jerk and her snatching receiving position. Yeah. Okay.
And that stuff's not like exclusive to powerlifting. I mean, obviously there's Olympic lifters that do that too. So, but in general, that's certainly a lot more popular. The bodybuilding kind of movements are more popular in powerlifting.
So I forgot to ask you, what are your best power lifts now at this stage? I might as well say in competition as opposed to...
The best in competition, I squatted 320.
Weighing what?
I weighed like 99 kilos, I think, and then I deadlifted, I think, 290 kilos, and then I don't know, bench press 10 kilos. Something terrible. 140 maybe, 145.
And
special.
Okay, and for any Americans watching who've no idea what you just said, what does that mean?
It's like a 705 squat, a 315 bench maybe, and like a 640, 650 deadlift. Somewhere around there. I don't remember what the best of it.
And what do you, in terms of competing, what do you actually like about competing in powerlifting? Like, is there anything? Obviously, you'll notice the difference between competing as a weightlifter and powerlifter. So, what differences have you noticed?
The difference in competition, the weightlifting competitions they're less. The sport of weightlifting has changed in the last decade. They changed some rules so that you only have to take a 1 kilo jump in weight, and that rule has shifted the competition to be more competitive. It's much more about making the lifts you choose and choosing the right lift to beat people. You can see at all times who's lifting and what they're lifting and when the next person is going to lift. You can see the attempts they've selected. So there's a lot more strategy. Yeah. The strategy is more evolved, right? It's much more a matter of trying to push people to take lifts that they can't make while at the same time knowing the best of your abilities and executing that the closest you can to what you can actually do. In powerlifting, it seems a lot more like the strategy is in the training. People spend a huge amount of time in the training. They get strong. They develop their lifts. They map out a plan and they just execute the plan at the meet. So they might pick all 9 lifts that they're going to do and then just go through them one at a time. And maybe at the end on the 3rd deadlift, they'll change their attempt to try and beat their competition. It's not nearly as a heated competition as
it seems you don't have to adapt your strategy as much is what you're saying in powerlifting.
Right. It's also, I mean, some federations you weren't even allowed to change your attempt once you put it in, I think. I could be wrong about that, obviously, which is kind of strange because it almost isolates the competition to be something where it's more about, what your preparation has been for the sport, and then you just execute what you can, and it's sort of odd. It's not the same as weightlifting.
Well, which do you actually? Well, if you could do both again, which would you prefer to compete in?
Weightlifting. I mean, weightlifting is more. It's way more. It's a competition. I mean, weightlifting is a straightforward. Like, you are going to outlift somebody, and there's a mental component, there's a physical component, there's a strategic thing going on. It's not, weightlifting is a way more enjoyable competition. It's also, weightlifting is a lot more fun to watch because even the audience can tell what's going to happen. You can look and see, that person just made a lift, then the bar goes up in weight, the other person makes a lift, the bar goes up in weight. In powerlifting, everybody goes in flights, so they take their first attempt, then the second attempt, and third attempt. You don't know exactly where. It's really tough to follow, right? You don't know exactly where anyone is, and I'm sure someone will argue and say, "Yeah, it's easy to follow because I've been watching it for 100 years." But the point is, like,
I'm sure I'm asking your opinion anyway. So
it's I think it's a lot easier to follow weightlifting. I think the competition's a lot more exciting.
So if someone came down here and did a magic fairy wand, got rid of your wrist, got rid of both shoulder surgeries, and you could magically start weightlifting again, how would you change your approach? Or what have you learnt in your life of ruining yourself?
I wouldn't get hurt. That's what I would do. I would, if I was going to do it all differently, I would make sure I found the first thing I would do is make sure I spent the time to perfect my technique. The first thing I did was to really ensure that I was doing things immaculately.
So it would be wear and tear.
What's that?
So it wouldn't be a wear and tear in your body.
Just because because it's like the likelihood of you doing it perfectly, just going through the motions, is not going to happen. You're not going to just sort of get good at it because you practice 6 hours a day. You know, I would really spend a lot of time perfecting it. I would just hold myself to a much, much, much higher standard than I did, and accept nothing but perfect technique. And at the same time, I would be as aggressive as I could, you know, training. I mean, obviously you have to do both, but I definitely would spend a lot more time trying to become a much better lifter, technically. And then on top of that, I would probably surround myself with people that were really, really good at what I was bad at, you know, and push myself to do that. You know,
Did you not already do that though? When you went
did.
to
I mean, I always tried to, but I mean, I would re-emphasize that. I mean, I would try to, you know, if I was bad at the jerk, I would try to, you know, I would try to become the best I could at it. I mean, the best person in the gym at the jerk. You know, I mean, the goal would always be to improve where you're weakest. You know, but then on top of that, all that stuff. I mean, I probably would do it similar kind of thing. You know, I don't think I would change entirely the way I trained, just the mentality I had when I trained. You know, instead of being lazy about something, or, you know, let things slip, you know, I just hold myself to a higher standard. You know, I think that's the biggest thing that kind of creates problems down the road, is that you let a standard slip, right? If you only accept perfect this, perfect that, and then one day you it's not as good, but it's okay, I'll go up, or I'll do this, or I'll do that. It's like you just keep letting it slip, and it just degrades. And then once you do that, it just starts to degrade and degrade and degrade. You know, that's one thing that my wife Joanne does. She does extremely well. Is she has like a relentless attitude about finding what's wrong and fixing it, and like obsessive to the point where, you know, if she has a problem, or she faults, or has an issue technically, or whatever it is, she'll completely obsess over it until she fixes it, you know, until it's better. I think you see a lot of like the Chinese lifters do that. They spend an enormous amount of time at all stages just trying to be perfect. It's a cultural thing too. I mean, you know, the effort put into perfecting what they do. I mean, and shows, obviously they're incredible. You know, so I think that's the biggest thing I would have done.
What are your best ever lifts again in the weightlifting movements?
In the gym, I did 140, 170, weighing like 90 kilos.
And in competition?
I don't remember. I don't remember the last competition I did. It was probably a lot less.
And what's your biggest ever clean?
I cleaned 182. I did 180 for a double. But, you know, I did all that right before I had a surgery on a hernia, like a hernia inside my hip. And once I had that surgery, I trained, you know, recovered from that, and I was training again, so I had to take a break. And then I was recovering from that, and I started lifting again, and I got up to like a 170 clean in about 3 weeks. And then I was at that point, I think I was coming around. My technique was good, and then I just had some fluke day where I hurt myself, and that was it. Like, you know, the total like freak thing. I mean, it wasn't like any warning sign, or it just out of nowhere just hurt myself, and that was it. So I think it would have been a lot better. You know, I hope I would have been a lot better. I guess, I don't know. I hope I would have been. So I cleaned 182. My best squat at the time was like 250, 240. Best back squat.
Was that low bar or high bar?
That was a front squat. So no, it was I don't remember what it was. 240, I think, at the time. You know. So I mean, if I did 180 with a 240 squat, I'm sure I could have done a lot more with a 300 squat or a 290 squat or whatever. You know. And if I did a low bar squat, I probably could have done 800.
All right, last thing before we finish. What's the most impressive lift or feat of strength you've ever seen from a weightlifter?
That I've ever seen?
Yeah, that you've ever personally witnessed.
Personally witnessed. From a weightlifter. That's a tough one.
Oh, weightlifter or powerlifter, whatever.
From a weightlifter, one of the most impressive things I saw was I was like probably I had been training for maybe like 6 months, maybe a year, and I watched Tom Goff come into the gym, and he hadn't lifted weights I think in maybe probably 4 or 5 years. I think he hadn't touched a weight in 5 years, and he was visiting his dad. His dad was my coach, Steve Goff. And he was wearing hiking boots and jeans, and he power clean and jerk like 160. And I thought, I would probably weigh 90 kilos. I thought that was pretty amazing. He hadn't lifted in forever. I don't know the most impressive feat of strength this year. I haven't really seen, like, never really been surrounded by that many lifters, you know, to see that. I mean, you know, I'm trying to think.
Any freakish powerlifting anecdote?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of strong guys in powerlifting, but it's not the same. It's a different sport, you know. It's not. I mean, there's so many guys that squat 800 pounds in powerlifting, and there's so many guys squatting 700, and so it's like it's just a different. It doesn't sink in as much, you know, and then it gets distorted because you have a lot of guys wearing equipment, you know, so they have a suit on or whatever, and it doesn't. The numbers become distorted, so you have these numbers that sound so astronomical, and it's so hard to relate to because you don't understand, like I, you know, what is it? Is it impressive for a guy to squat 1,000 pounds wearing, you know, a suit and wraps and a monolift and all this stuff? Like, so many guys can do it now. Is it impressive anymore? Like, so it's hard to say. You know what I mean? Everything gets distorted in that sport. But I mean, you watch a guy clean and jerk 210 or 220, you know, that's pretty amazing. I guess I remember seeing Nikolai Hristov when he was here, when we lifted in with Abajev, and he tried to clean and jerk 230, and I think he missed it about 7 or 8 times. Cleaned it 7 or 8 times, he missed the jerk all the times. He missed the jerk because he was on a platform that was really slippery. So he made every jerk in the split, but his feet kept slipping apart, so he had to drop it. He couldn't recover. That was pretty impressive. I don't think I've ever seen anyone do 5, 6 cleans with 230 kilos before. Or since.
And if anyone wants to be coached by a Max, how do they get in contact with you?
You can't. No, you probably
You're too elitist.
I don't even know the website. I don't have anything. I'm terrible about using computers and the internet and all that. If you go to my Facebook or Google, like Max Aita Training, I think is the name of it, you can find it. Is that what it's called? Max Aita Training?
I have no idea.
I hope that's the name. I know if you go to maxsgym.net, it's like a gay gym. So...
That's me.
Why don't you go there first?